And now what we're going to do in here, let's just make sure that these buttons are showing up correctly. Okay, so we got new game nicely in the center there. That's good. And remember that we were dividing by 2 for screen width to get to the center of the screen, and then we had to subtract half of the button width. Did the same thing with height and button height, except we also subtracted spacing. And the reason was to just move the button up because we're going to add one below it in a minute. And then we make sure that the width of the button and the height of the button are set to the correct values. So now once we push new game, we're going to do application, oh, I'm going to spell it completely wrong, application.loadLevel game. So this is a built-in Unity function that will load another scene of whatever name the scene happens to be. So we're just going to make a new scene. We're going to save it as game. Whoop. And let's do something funky like change the background color here, just so we know it's a different screen. It's ugly anyway. Okay, so now if we run this, we should be able to click new game and nothing will happen because we haven't set our build settings properly. So if you use this application.loadLevel function, it won't just load any scene out of the project folder. It will only load it if it's been set up here. File, build settings, and then you can actually just go into your project window, select all the levels you want, and drag them into here. Now these are the Unity scenes or the Unity levels that will actually get put in the final build of your game once you hit build. If you don't include any, if you don't include a particular scene in here from your project, it won't be included in the final build. But you also need it to just load scenes in general using that function. So now we should be able to go to our ugly ass game. And I'm going to hide this cube because I don't like it anymore. Okay, so now we have a new game. And if we wanted to add more options, we could go through and we could type some more code that would create another button. We'd have to manually blah, 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 blah. But that's kind of annoying. We don't want to do that. There should be an easier way to place the buttons without having to think about where each individual button is going to be relative to each other. So there's a way to do that. There's another GUI set of functions here called GUI layout, and we're going to create a new area. Now an area is basically a space that we're creating that will let us organize buttons inside it automatically. We're going to do button width divided by 2, screen.height divided by 2 minus button. Now we need a bigger space for this because this area we're creating is actually going to be for a bunch of buttons. Button width. Actually, let's do 200, 400 here. Okay, so we've created this new area. It just takes a rectangle. Now I'm going to indent this because down here we're going to add an end area. And indentations are nice to just keep track of which code is inside this begin area, end area stuff. Now I'm going to use the GUI layout version of the button. Remember up here we're using GUI.button, now we're using GUI layout.button. Oh, GUI layout. Now this is a special little function here that'll just let me set the height of this button. So same code to load the level as before, but the GUI button has changed. It's now GUI layout.button, and instead of taking a rectangle, it takes a name and it takes this GUI layout special function here. And now we're going to do GUI layout.space, and this will just create a space. I'm just going to change this around so that it uses the spacing variable that we created earlier. Well, and really, to be nice about this, we should be using this button height variable instead of just typing 50 all the time, because then later if we want to change the height of these buttons, we can just go into here and change them. We can actually expose these values. They're all private right now, but we can make them public, and then we would be able to edit them inside Unity. So let's try that and see if that works too. So I'll do one more here. Okay, so I'm gonna add some spaces in here just to make this a bit more readable. So we create a new area, and then we use the GUI layout button function to create each of these individual buttons. They all have the same button height. They're all spaced with the same spacing values. So let's see if this worked. Cool. Now remember, we exposed some variables here. Sounds naughty, but it's not really that naughty. So I'm going to go over here and tweak with these values. Okay, so I can adjust spacing, and these will space up and down a bit. I can change the button height. I can change the button width. So that's pretty cool. Now, what I'm not going to show you is how to make a save menu today, or how to make this exit button work. I will do that later. I also want to start showing you guys how to actually make menus that don't use the Unity GUI, because while it is useful for doing debug stuff, really for a final game you don't want to just have these sort of transparent black buttons everywhere. Although, to be fair, there is a way to skin the GUI as well. You can make different style sheets for it, kind of like CSS, if you know web stuff. But even then, it's still not as customizable as using 3D objects to make a GUI. And we will talk about that next time. Thanks for listening.